If I told you, if I told you just half of everything I've always wanted to.
Welcome back, Camily, to another tea time with Cam. Got my tea, today's cup. I may not be perfect, but my dog loves me. So true. I'm drinking green tea. I have not done a tea time with Cam, nor have I even really been drinking that much tea lately. It's just been a really long time, you know? I feel like life has just been so busy, and you've seen a lot of it and heard a lot about it these last few months. But I kind of want to catch you up on how I've been doing through all of it. It's been a lot of change. It was a long time coming and a lot went into it. So I thought today I'd just kind of have an open chat with you about everything and anything, but mostly how I've really been doing and kind of a mental health update. First of all, my perception of time has been very weird lately. I got here and I was like, oh cool, the sun sets way later, because in Florida it was setting so early at 6 o'clock, and it was really annoying me. I was not vibing with it at all. And then I got here and I'm like, oh my gosh, the sun sets so much later here. That's awesome. Literally 2 days later, the time changes. Daylight savings happened and now it sets at 6 again. And it's really annoying. Someone I was talking to though was telling me that it's done next year in 2023, we're not doing that anymore, America's not participating, which first of all, who's calling that shot? Who's in charge? I totally respect that. I think we should abolish daylight savings, but who has the power to do that? I'm just curious. And also I don't really believe it. I don't know if it's true. I don't know. Anyways, I really hope that that's true and next year we don't have to do this. It's also pretty cold here, which Florida is known for being rather warm, even through the winter, and I don't really do great in the winter, honestly. I've never liked the cold. I grew up in Hawaii and it was just always warm. I feel of all the seasons to move here, this was probably the worst time to move, because as soon as I got here, it just started getting really cold and is gonna be cold for a while, which all my northerners, I don't even want to hear it because I know you're gonna be like, that's cold to you? It's not that cold there. It's snowing over here. 50 degrees is very cold to me, okay? But yeah, like I said, I just don't do well with it, and the gloomy weather has definitely reflected my gloomy mood. A lot happened right before I moved. A lot of personal family stuff, things having to do with my relationships with people and my friendships. And specifically, there was 2 people in my life that at one point I felt very close to and I really trusted them. You know, they were just a big part of my life and I've had to cut them off. Both 2 very different situations with 2 different reasons for this happening. But being so busy with the move and everything, those emotions just went unprocessed for me. I just kind of had to push my feelings aside and power through and get stuff done, which I used to be really good at. And I guess I'm still good at it. I'm very capable of compartmentalizing those feelings and just doing what I have to do. It's definitely something that isn't necessarily hard for me, but it does go against my nature and what my heart is telling me to do, you know? It definitely affects me in big ways if I just leave it there in that box. So I think the grief of losing those relationships, as well as saying goodbye to the people that I loved, all the friends that I made in Florida, all the time I spent there, and also just grieving that period of my life for what it was. I think my time there was very necessary for me. I learned so much. I'm coming out of it such a different person. When I first moved there, I was the most broken I've ever been. I was also just really pissed off to be moving there. I did not want to move back to Florida. I had a year prior left Florida, moved to Austin, and when we finally did, it felt so good to not be in Florida anymore. We were really happy to not be Floridians. And so after all that, working so hard to move out on my own, I felt like I was back at square one, but in an even worse situation. I spent my first year there just kind of losing it and on a downward spiral. I didn't even really recognize it at the time because I was still so numb, but I was so self-deprecating. Like, I hated myself. I hated myself so much. I was reading my old journals last night and seeing the way I talked about myself, and I was always at one end of the spectrum or the other. It was always an extreme. I always spoke in extremes and absolutes, and this is true without a shadow of a doubt. There's no nuance here. It's black or white. It's this or that. This is true. I am a bad person. I am unworthy, unlovable. I don't deserve anything good. And it was so negative, and I just kind of didn't even realize how bad I was. I was just like, yeah, just trying to pick up the pieces, living day by day. And the more you tell yourself awful things about yourself, the more you believe them to be true, and the more it kind of manifests into reality. If you believe that you're awful, you're gonna be pretty awful sometimes, And there's several times where I lashed out on those around me who just cared, who were just concerned, who just loved me and were trying to help. And I was so defensive. I thought everyone was out to get me. I thought everyone hated me, my own family. And I pushed them away, and I was really mean to them sometimes. And I think, they understood it wasn't personal, which I'm glad they didn't take it personally, and it didn't really have a lasting effect on any of my relationships. But it was just kind of sad to wake up and realize damn, I've been pretty awful to be around, huh? So after 6 months of that, I kind of realized I don't want to be that person, and in order to do that, I had to see myself in a better light. I still held a lot of resentment towards my past self, who I had been, everything that had happened that had landed me in the position that I was in. Once I had finally done some work and realized some things, I thought the only reason that I was good now, that I felt better and a better person, was because I wasn't who I was. And eventually I realized that I've always just been really hard on myself, and none of that stuff was ever really true to who I actually am. All that bad stuff that I thought made me such a bad person was just a projection of my insecurities, a projection of things that other people told me that I was, that I internalized and believed, and none of that was actually ever really me. So after realizing what was going on, trying to do better, and then forgiving the past versions of myself, I had finally opened up all this room for growth and self-love and self-exploration. And that's really when I started to blossom into who I am today. And so the second year of living in Florida was self-discovery. And it was really hard at times, and I felt very isolated, but I needed to feel that way. I am so glad I went through those feelings, and I'm still kind of going through those feelings. Prior to that time, I had been in a very codependent relationship for 5 years. And those were very important years of my life. Those were my teenage years. I was developing my sense of self. And the whole thing with codependent relationships is it kind of strips away that sense of self. So I was very stunted in that way, and I really took some time to kind of catch up. I felt so painfully lonely, yet so incredibly free all at once. And I learned who I am, and I learned to really love who I am, and I learned my value and to not let other people treat me less than I deserve. I've never really been one to say something, to confront people, to set a boundary, to stick up for myself. And so to kind of end that period of my life with really setting some boundaries. And it wasn't because, I should probably set this boundary, huh? That'd probably be the right thing for me to do. I fought it. I tried to not set those boundaries. I tried to accept it, to kind of let those people walk all over me, to make excuses for them, to forgive them, to give them all these chances. But after all the work I had done, and once I had really internalized that self-love, because at the beginning of my journey, it was like I was trying to convince myself. I was doing these affirmations and trying to remind myself, trying to tell myself. That was the hard part, was turning it from something I didn't really believe, but I wanted to believe, to eventually really internalizing that. And then once that was something I really believed with my whole heart, it was impossible to allow people to hurt me in that way. As much as I tried to just let it go, there was this part of me that was like, I can't stand for this. This isn't gonna continue to happen. I'm gonna protect myself against this. It goes against who I've been in the past, how I've acted my whole life, to finally say, I'm gonna protect my peace, I'm gonna protect my heart. And as much as I love these people and I have understanding for them, and I get that it might not be personal and maybe they don't mean to do these things, but they are, and they continue to, and it has to stop. I can still love them and have understanding, but not want to subject myself to that. So eventually it just kind of hit a breaking point, and it's pretty silly the way the universe works, how it all kind of happened at once. Right before I moved, all the people who I had kind of put on a pedestal and made excuses for, I was giving them way more credit than they had deserved because I cared about them and loved them. But all at once, right before I moved, everyone in my life who had been causing me pain continuously, they each pushed my boundaries more than they ever have before. And I needed that to happen. I needed to open my eyes and see, this person isn't going to change. How many chances have I given them? And how much do they push back each time? The universe showed me the reality of the situation and asked me, are you going to tolerate this? And it made it that much easier to leave, to close that chapter, to say, I don't have what I think I have here. This place and these people aren't what I need them to be. This is not where my support system lies, and I am making the right choice by leaving and trying to build community elsewhere. And when I finally drove away, I felt so relieved. I think by that point, I was more than ready to leave the past behind me. But I still feel like I haven't really been able to fully process all of that. I've just been so busy with trying to establish my new life here. I was so excited to get here and just start setting it all up, especially after all the waiting and the planning and the daydreaming of what it might be like when I finally got here. It's definitely been at the top of my priority list to really get us situated, and then I can deal with the feelings of it all afterwards. And then we got here and shit kind of hit the fan. Pretty much right after I moved, maybe a week later, I got the flu. So did the girls. We all had the flu. It was awful. Luckily, the girls didn't get it too bad, but it really hit me like a truck. I'm talking like a 48-hour migraine, nonstop. Couldn't even sleep because my head was literally pounding. Even just talking about it, I can feel the pressure in my eyeballs and what it felt like. It literally felt like my eyes were gonna pop out. I hadn't felt that sick in a long time. And so I spent a week pretty much just in bed with the kids. And then the next week we were still just kind of drained from the move, from being sick, kind of just emotionally. And that week my sister was out of town. In the first few weeks I was here, she was watching them for me till I can get them in daycare. But she wasn't there that week, and I don't blame her. She was on vacation. Love that for her, but really needed some help. That week of all weeks, for sure. So in those 2 weeks, right after we moved, really nothing had gotten done. I unpacked the kitchen and the basic things just so it was somewhat livable, but I really hadn't done much past that. And that was really upsetting to me because, like I said, I was really eager to get things set up. I just had it in my head that after we get established and get settled, then life can really start. Then all these exciting things that I've been waiting for can be set in motion. You know, working towards my new career path, making friends, socializing, signing up for sports. None of that could happen until we were just settled first, you know? So I was kind of hard on myself. What's new? But I really tried to remind myself that, like, okay, it'll get done at some point. It's out of my control. I feel absolutely horrible right now, physically, mentally. Like, let's just give ourselves a little grace here, huh, Cameron? Let's chill. So after all that, we went to Dallas for Thanksgiving and spent like half a week there, which is always fun. I love visiting Dallas. I love visiting his family. Last time I went was a year ago, last November, but it was kind of hard. It always is, being around his family and not him, especially being that there was new people there this year at Thanksgiving that had never met Landon. Both of his brothers have new significant others now, so that was just kind of strange for me. I always kind of followed Landon around on Thanksgiving, and you know, it was his family we were with, and especially back then I was a lot more shy, and he was definitely like a buffer. But since I've been around their family for so long and I'm family myself now, I was able to kind of come out of my shell more, even with Landon not here. Me and the girls slept in Landon's old room together. She was pointing at all of his stuff and asking about it. There was an old toy chest filled with Landon's toys from when he was a kid, and the girls were playing with those. Just little reminders. You know, that room is really where me and Landon fell in love, where we spent a lot of time together. That's where he asked me to be his girlfriend, and we went to a few places around town where me and Landon like used to go on dates there. And so that was a lot emotionally for me. And then we traveled back, and the next morning the girls started their first day of daycare, which was kind of hard, but that's to be expected. They did so well though, and I'm really proud of how independent they are. Anyone who spends any amount of time with them tells me that they can see I'm doing such a good job just through the way my girls behave. Not just because like they're polite and well behaved and quiet and they sit still, but because they are just such amazing, beautiful souls. They are so caring, so loving, so smart, so compassionate, and very independent. And I had no doubts that they would do really well at daycare, and they have been. But then I was alone for a week, and I was finally feeling well physically again, but emotionally I felt so backed up from saying goodbye to my friends, blocking out those people from my life right before moving, loading everything I own, driving across the country, unloading everything I own, having to ask for help and accept help from others through that process, being frustrated that I was sick and that I couldn't unpack, kind of re-navigating my relationship with Landon's family now that I'm living near them again. Just so much in the span of a few weeks has been weighing on me emotionally, and I just wasn't processing it, any of it. Just stuffing it down and stuffing it down. And I feel like my physical being, where I was, the things around me, being in my body, I hadn't really caught up mentally to that physical reality yet because I hadn't really been processing anything. I was so stuck, and it was not a good feeling at all. And I just knew I needed to cry, to just let it out. But it's really hard for me to kind of snap back into my feelings when I've been pushing them down. Like I said, it's easy for me to stuff my feelings down when I need to. I think that's a survival thing that I've picked up from my childhood. There's been times where it's really served me well to be able to push my feelings down when necessary. But opening it back up is a whole other story. And I'm definitely a much happier person when I am regularly processing my emotions, when I'm being aware, when I'm grounding myself in my physical reality. But I was really starting to feel dissociated. And I'm really familiar with that feeling. There's been points in my life where for months at a time, I was just completely disassociated from reality, just completely going through the motions, just so detached, and I was really starting to feel that way again. So with all the alone time I had this week, instead of focusing on unpacking my whole house and being like super productive, which is how I've kind of been coping in the past like couple months, I realized like I just need to focus on my mental health this week. And so I put on a sad song and got in the shower, which is my favorite place to cry. And I just cried very, very, very hard. Just let all of that energy flow through me and flow out of me. It felt really good, but it really took a lot out of me, and I just spent the rest of the day like just kind of chilling. Sitting in my feelings, reading, relaxing. And then the next day, I kind of picked myself up and really tried to cope in healthier ways. Not that crying my eyes out and then sitting around all day isn't healthy. It needed to happen, but it didn't feel very productive as far as getting some momentum to like really process those and work through those feelings rather than just like trying to feel them at all. I needed to feel them first and access them first before I could process them. So then I spent a day processing it. I journaled, I meditated, I stretched. I went to Barton Springs, which is so beautiful. It's a natural spring and you can like see the skyline of Austin as you're swimming. And I got in the water, even though it was so cold. It was very, very cold, but so refreshing. I take cold showers sometimes anyways, so it wasn't too bad. And I just laid there and like floated on my back for a few minutes. And it was just really healing. I just felt really good. I did a lot of just self-compassion work. Like I said, I was just kind of beating myself up for like not being productive enough, for the move not really playing out how I wanted it to. I don't know, in the last few months before I moved, I was working so hard, doing all this planning and packing, and I just kept telling myself, you know, it'll just be so much better the second I get there, right when I get to my new house, right when I unpack that truck and I get all my stuff in here, get all my furniture, it'll all be worth it and it'll all feel so good and it's all downhill from there. And you know, it felt good and it felt gratifying, but then there was roadblocks and it just didn't play out the way I thought it would in my head. But instead of being mad at myself for something out of my control, I just tried to be compassionate with myself and really remind myself that I have time, you know, there's really no rush. Whenever I am ready, it will all get done and it will feel just as good. I can't expect myself to function at my highest capacity when it comes to productivity when I'm feeling so much emotional gunk. So that's what this week was all about for me. I've been unpacking the house slowly but surely. It's still not done by any means. Just whenever I felt like it throughout the week, I'd pick a box and unpack it, and that was that. I tend to have this mindset of like, I need to get it all done at once and like tackling these big projects. And it's really hard for me to like go at a slower pace sometimes, but I recognize that like this week, that couldn't be the focus. And even if it's happening at a slower pace, at least it's still happening. And now that I've kind of cleared all that up, I'm really ready for all the stuff I've been excited about, for what's ahead. I'm starting to make some plans. I bought a concert ticket today. We're gonna go look at some Christmas lights tonight. You know, exciting things are happening. And I'm just really happy with where I'm at in this exact moment. Good things are ahead, for sure. And I think I kind of lost sight of that for a while. I just got so overwhelmed. And it's funny to see all the negative little things that tend to seep into my life when I'm feeling that way. I start to get like really anxious all the time and wake up anxious and go to sleep anxious and be really insecure and care about things that I normally wouldn't and see things in a way I normally wouldn't. And that defensiveness kind of starts to come out of me again, and I get really pissed off at comments on the internet that I would normally just brush off and be like, they don't know what they're talking about. But instead I feel the need to reply and make my point. And I just felt really physically like gross and ugly and picking apart my body, which I don't normally do. But when you hold negative energy inside of you and you refuse to release it, it's gotta come out somehow, and it's gonna come out in bad ways. And I'm just so glad that I'm not living that way anymore, that I've figured out for myself how to process my emotions in a healthy way that gets me somewhere, because that used to be my constant state. I was constantly defensive, constantly picking apart my body, constantly anxious. There was no end in sight. I didn't get a break. I didn't have any peace. It was all pain. And I don't live that way anymore. And I'm really happy I'm at a place in my life where I can manage my mental health. I just need the time and the space to do so, and to just give myself some grace. Well, that's pretty much it for today. I didn't really know where this video was heading, but I do feel better. I haven't been going to therapy since I moved because I'm still trying to find a new therapist, and I forgot how good it feels to just kind of talk about my feelings. And I love that I have this outlet and all these people who genuinely care. And I really hope hearing me talk about these things helps you in some way. I love you guys. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.